Making steamed shrimp is super easy. You just throw the shrimp in and steam it, right? But if you want to make Maryland-style steamed shrimp, there's a few things you need to know. And I'm going to go over that in this video, including how to pick the best shrimp for the job. Welcome to the Salt and Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today we're gonna make Maryland-style steamed shrimp. Now, Maryland-style steamed shrimp are a little bit different than you may be used to, but oh my gosh, they are absolutely delicious and so easy to do in the Ninja Foodi pressure cooker and air crisper. We use the steam function. I'm doing this recipe in the 6.5 quart, but you could use the 5 quart or the 8 quart. That's perfectly fine. You could even do this on the stove top with just a steamer or 2 pans, a colander on top of a pan of water, and it's gonna work just fine, so no worries there. You can even do it in the Instant Pot. However, you need to know whether your model of Instant Pot seals the pot when it steams, or does it allow the steam to release. Some of them allow the steam to release, which is true steaming, and some of them actually trap the steam in, which is not exactly what we want in this recipe. So if you have that model that traps all the steam in, your shrimp's gonna cook faster, so you really need to decrease the time. I would probably steam for maybe 1 minute, okay, if you're using that style of Instant Pot. All right, but the Ninja Foodi, we vent it. It works beautifully, and I love using it. So what we're gonna do first is I have the basket in with the legs on. Now, if your model of Ninja Foodi does not come with a basket, because they've recently switched that out to a crisping plate, you could probably do this recipe on the crisping plate, but I would recommend purchasing the basket, honestly. You're gonna have a lot more uses for the basket, in my opinion. So in order to steam, we need to have liquid, and the rule of thumb is to use 2 cups at least of liquid when you're steaming. But to make these Maryland style, we're gonna use beer, and I'm gonna use 2 bottles of beer. This beer is cold right out of the refrigerator, and that will make a difference. So if you wanna use water instead, or wine, or some other kind of broth, make sure it's cold, because the timing in this recipe is based on 2 cold beers. So you're gonna use, what are they, 12 ounces apiece? So use 24 ounces of whatever thin liquid you want. If you don't wanna use the beer, you can use any kind of beer you like to. That's totally up to you. We're gonna go ahead and just pour this right into the basket. So a lot of people like to start with hot water or hot broth or heat it up before you pressure cook or steam, but that is going to mess up this recipe, so don't do that. Use cold liquid or your timing is going to be off. And timing is everything with making steamed shrimp, because if you undercook them, they're raw. If you overcook them, they are hard to peel, they are rubbery, and they are just not very good. And now we're gonna get our first ingredient, which might not be usual, which is an onion. Now, usually I always cook with Vidalia onions, but for this, I use a white onion. Will it matter if you use a Vidalia? No. Will it matter if you use a yellow? No. You can even use red, it's fine. But I like to get a nice size white onion for this recipe. And then I just cut the onion in half. You can use 1 or 2 onions. It doesn't make any difference. Depends on how many shrimp you're making. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, about timing for more volume of shrimp. It may be a little bit different. All right, so then once you cut off both ends, so the root end and the stem end, peel the top layer off, and then just cut them into 1/3 or 4ths, okay? We want large pieces of onion, like that. Okay, and then just throw them in the pot, and I do separate them so that they all cook evenly. If you have a big chunk like this, you might end up with some hard onions at the end, and that's not what you want. All right, so I'm gonna do that for the other half of the onion too, and I'm creating a bed. Okay, so we're just gonna lay this all over the bottom of this pot. All right, so once all of your onions are in the basket and separated, that's really important in this recipe, then we're gonna add some seasonings. What I use is 2 bay leaves, so I just nestle them down, no worries there. I use 1 tablespoon of mustard, whole mustard seed, okay, but I only put in half right now, so I sprinkle about half right over the onions. The next thing I'm gonna add, I have 1 tablespoon of peppercorns, whole black peppercorns. I'm gonna add half in right now. And this is optional. You really don't have to add the peppercorns. The mustard seed, I would say definitely for a true Maryland style. The peppercorns are something that I add because I like them. Now, you cannot make this unless you have 1 or 2 types of seasonings. It won't be Maryland style. Either Old Bay or J.O.'s crab seasoning. Either one of those is perfectly fine and it will still be a traditional Maryland style steamed shrimp. But without this, it's not. It's just steamed shrimp that you made up, which is going to be fine. So if you can't find it, don't have it. Make up some kind of wonderful, delicious seasoning and throw it on your shrimp. All right, so I have 2 or 3 tablespoons, I didn't really measure, of the Old Bay, and I put in about 1 tablespoon right now. Now keep in mind as I sprinkle this over, I don't want people to freak out like this is a ton of seasoning. Plus, you're just flavoring the outside of the shrimp and the onions, so it's not really, you don't get all that. It's not that salty, and it's really delicious. Trust me on this one. All right, so now to do the steaming, we're gonna steam the onions for a few minutes before we put the shrimp in, because the shrimp don't take hardly any time at all to steam, and the onions are a little too hard if you try to put them all in together. But if you like really crunchy onions, you can skip this part. All right, so we're gonna go on the steam function, and we wanna go down to 2 minutes. 3 minutes was a softer onion. 1 minute, the onion was a little too hard for my liking. So 2 minutes is where I like my onions, but I like them with a little bit of a bite. If you want them softer, go 3 minutes. Make sure that the valve in the back is to the vent position and it is sitting up on the ledge. You don't want it to accidentally fall down and start to seal the pot during this. So you definitely want it up and seated on the little ledge there so it doesn't move, okay? All right, so hit the start button. Now, the preheat time, it's taking that cold beer, it's got to heat it up, it's got to bring it to boiling to create the steam. While that happens, we'll see some steam start to come out of the valve and also the little button, I'll call it a button just for clarity. The little button in the back that pops up when we're pressure cooking, it kind of dances when you're steaming. So it might even pop all the way up. The newer model of pressure cooker like I have here seems to pop the button a lot more, and it will even stay popped like through the whole steaming process. But don't worry, you're not pressure cooking because you've got the valve vented in the back. So we're allowing steam to come out, so we are not pressure cooking. You might have a different model of Ninja Foodi, my older one. It hardly ever pops the red button. This one's silver, but the other one's red. It hardly ever pops up during steaming. So, they're just a little bit different. I've not figured out why. Don't worry about it, okay? I've tested this recipe. These times are gonna work for you, whether the button's up or down. Don't worry about it, okay? All right, so now we just let it do its thing, and we're gonna make up some cocktail sauce, okay, which is my favorite dipping sauce for steamed shrimp. But first, before I do that, before I get those ingredients out, let's go ahead and talk about the shrimp because that is very important. Now, I no longer live in Maryland, and I don't have a lot of access to good seafood. So I did test this recipe with the type of shrimp that I can get at Walmart, which are the easy peel. They do have shells on them, but they're already deveined, and they're farm raised. So they've got really thin shells. They're like paper, and it works. It works, okay? You want to decrease your time. I'm going to steam the shrimp for 3 minutes. You're probably going to decrease that to 1.5 to 2 minutes tops for those type of shrimp, but they're not as good. So definitely try to find some wild caught shrimp, and these are USA wild caught shrimp, and they are probably, I would say they're probably extra large. Maybe jumbo. I think the count was 18, maybe 16 to 18 per pound, I think these were. And that's a great size, okay? That's a perfect size for steamed shrimp. They're big enough to be substantial, but they're not so big that they get really chewy and rubbery or overcooked if they're too small. So if you can't find shrimp that are this size, okay, which is, again, they go by count per pound. So these are about 16 16 to 18 per pound. And I'm using 1 pound of shrimp, I should mention that as well. So if you can't find the 16 to 18 and you find something that's a little bit like 20 to 22, you're gonna take your steam time down to about 2 minutes, okay? I haven't tested it with all the various sizes, but that would be my estimate for steaming. If you wanted to try your hand at larger shrimp, what I would do is still steam for 3 minutes, okay? So if you have extra jumbo shrimp, which I don't ever buy because they are too tough for me. I just don't like them. But if you do and you wanna use them, keep the steam time the same, 3 minutes, okay? Keep that the same, but don't open the lid for another maybe 2 to 3 minutes. And that, the residual heat in the pot will gently finish cooking those larger shrimp for you without risking overcooking, because overcooking is the worst thing you can do to shrimp. Have you ever been out and gotten some steamed shrimp and it's like you can't even peel them at all and they're real rubbery? That's because they were overcooked. So we don't want to do that. All right, let me grab the ingredients for some delicious cocktail sauce. And we'll whip that up while this is building up to the steam. So it takes a little while, just let it go. It's perfectly fine. All right, so making cocktail sauce is, you just need a few ingredients. In fact, you can just make it with 2 ingredients if you want, which is prepared horseradish, very different from horseradish cream. So I sent my husband to the store to get horseradish, and he didn't realize that it's in the refrigerated section. So he was like trying to find all kinds of things. He said, there's only creamy horseradish sauce, and that's what's in the aisle, like near the ketchup, I think. But the prepared horseradish is going to be in the refrigerated section of your grocery store. In Maryland, it's always been by the seafood, but in Tennessee, it's by the yogurt. Go figure, don't know. So ask somebody if you can't find it. So you want prepared horseradish. Now I'm sure you could use fresh, but I have never done that, so I do not know how or what amount. So we're just gonna stick with what I know here. All right, I'm gonna use 1/2 cup of ketchup. Now keep in mind, you can make as little or as much cocktail sauce as you want. So I'm just gonna make, probably it'll be like just a little over 1/2 cup when I'm done. So 1/2 cup of ketchup. And then when it comes to the horseradish sauce, you want to use just enough for your liking. So there is no steadfast rule on this. You can use as much or as little as you want. I go by look. So I'm gonna start off with 1 teaspoon and mix it up. 1/2 teaspoon would be very mild. This would be mild +1, but I don't stop there. No, because I like it really spicy. So we'll add in 2. This would probably be hot, okay? And it looks about like what I would make if I was serving it for friends and family. So that looks pretty good. In fact, I'm just gonna leave it alone, even though I might actually add another teaspoon in. Most people, probably would be good with this. My husband would like it better this way. He's not even a fan of horseradish, but. All right, and then I'm gonna use, and I'll use the same spoon here, 1/2 tablespoon, and I'm sorry, I was saying this was a teaspoon, it was 1/2 tablespoon. So 1 tablespoon of horseradish, 1/2 tablespoon of the Worcestershire sauce. And that is it with the 1/2 cup of ketchup. So again, you can make as much or as little as you want. It looks good. You can throw a little bit of Old Bay in there, but I usually don't. You could also squeeze some lemon juice, but I usually don't. Oh. That's nice. It has a nice kick to it. Now, if that's too spicy for you, like if you add too much by accident, don't worry about it. Add some more ketchup in it. It's perfectly fine. Just whip it up to where you like it, and then you are good to go. All right, so we're hearing some steam, seeing some steam, and we've started the countdown, so we need to go to 2 minutes. Now, the pin right now is dancing. That's what I call it, dancing around. And it may pop up. If it pops up, you can't open the lid. So if this countdown is finished and the button is popped, which has been the case in all of my test recipes, then you just wait for it to go down. So I did factor that into the timing. So I just wait for it to go down. As soon as it goes down, I open it up. And then we're gonna get our shrimp in, steam those up, which just takes a few minutes, and we'll be done. All right, so we're almost done the steaming of the onions. I'm gonna get the shrimp ready to go in. So what I'm gonna do is add another tablespoon of the Old Bay, and I sprinkle this over the shrimp. The shrimp are slightly damp. And I also wanted to mention that you definitely want your shrimp to be thawed for this recipe, okay? You could use frozen, but you're not gonna get the right flavor because the Old Bay isn't going to stick to the shells as well. Thawing shrimp is super, super easy, so don't even worry about it. Like, it takes 5 minutes. Put them into a colander and run cold water from the sink over top, 5 minutes, and they're gonna be thawed, so no worries there. And then I'm gonna use this so I don't get dirty my hands. So then I just mix it around. Because they are a little damp, they're going to hold the seasoning. That is very important. I'm adding a little bit more Old Bay to mine because I noticed that I have a whole lot of water in the bottom from where they've been sitting longer than I ordinarily would have them sitting. So a lot of it kind of got mixed up down there. So, all right, now I'm just gonna dump these in. Doesn't matter if you put the water in, that's no problem. And we're gonna put on the remaining mustard seed, just put it right on top. And the remaining black peppercorns if you're gonna use them. All right, good to go. Now we put the lid back on and we're gonna steam for 3 minutes. So make sure you're to the vent steam, take it down to 3 minutes. Now it's not gonna take us long to start steaming because our liquid's already hot. So 3 minutes was the perfect amount of time, taking into consideration that it took about 30 seconds or so, maybe even a minute, for the button to pop back down because it was up when I've tested the recipe. So if you're steaming and your button in the back never pops up, let it sit after the 3 minutes. Let it sit another minute in the pot before you open the lid, and that'll ensure that you've perfectly cooked your shrimp. At least I hope so. All right, the 3 minutes is up, but our pin in the back is still also up, which means I can't open the lid, so I just wait. And that is factored in. So if your pin's down, just let it go for a minute before you open the lid. And the worst case scenario is if you open up the lid and your shrimp look like they are not quite cooked the way that you want them, just set the lid back on top and let the residual steam finish cooking them. Shrimp cook very, very fast. All right, the pin has dropped down, so I'm gonna open this up, do that away from you, and they look amazing. So we are done. Then you wanna get your platter that you're gonna serve them on, or a bowl is fine. I've also taken a half of a lemon and I've put it into wedges. I don't usually use lemon with my steamed shrimp, but a lot of people do. So, it's perfectly fine. And then you just take them out. They look absolutely amazing. And yes, you serve them with the onions, but not the bay leaf. So I'm gonna take those out. Oh my gosh, they smell so good. There's a restaurant in Maryland. It's in Annapolis area. It's called Heroes. And I used to go there and get these Maryland style steamed shrimp at least once a week. They're just amazing. The onions are, oh my gosh, so good cooked this way. And I can tell these shrimp are perfectly cooked, which is awesome. All right. Get every last bit, and the onions look like they are also perfectly cooked. So I am a happy camper right now. All right, so if you're gonna serve them, you can just put some lemon wedges around. And if people want to use them, they can. And if they don't have to. All right, there you go. Maryland style steamed shrimp. Absolutely delicious. I'm gonna let them cool just for a minute so that I can handle them with my hands, and then I'll peel them and give it a taste. All right, let's dig in. Let's grab an onion first. Now, usually with the onions, they hold on to some of the seasoning and even the mustard seeds, and that is perfectly fine. I eat them. Now, if you didn't want to, you could brush them off, but I eat the mustard seeds. If there's a bunch of peppercorns on there, I usually do kind of pop those off because those are a little harder to eat. Absolute perfect cook on those onions. They are soft, but just a tiny bit crunchy. And if you want them softer, remember, go up 3 minutes. All right, let's take this one and let's see how easy it peels, because that is the secret here. So when I'm peeling a shrimp, I take the legs off first. So I just kind of pinch and pull those off. And then I will take the shell and kind of unwrap the shrimp, just like that. So we make sure we get all of it off. Then I like to have a little handle for dipping in the cocktail sauce. So I hold the tail of the shrimp and peel off the next bit of shell. Make sure I don't have any more shell on the shrimp. And there you go. And I can tell right now, this is perfect. All right, dip it in there. Unreal. It is perfectly cooked. And when I say perfectly cooked, I mean perfectly cooked. It is tender. It has the texture of a really nice lobster. So shrimp should not be chewy, and they should not be hard to bite. They should not be rubbery. If they are overcooked. When you want to get that little bit out, squeeze. Okay? All right, that's it. Maryland style steamed shrimp. I hope you love these. Serve these to your friends, family, and yourself. Okay? They're delicious.